I first came across Robert Twigger when I read his brilliant book about spending a year training in martial arts with the Tokyo Riot Police. That then led me on to his fabulous book, Voyager, about the first expedition to cross Western Canada in a birch bark canoe since 1793. Robert also once captured the world's longest snake, which sadly he's not going to be talking about tonight. But I'm sure what he talks about tonight will be very interesting nonetheless. Please welcome a true polymath of adventure, Rob Twigger.
Is it working? Yeah, I'm ready. Go, let's go.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's go.
Wow. Yeah, you've got to have a dream. If you want to have a dream, if you want to have an expedition, you've got to have a dream. And for me, a dream is all about a moving image. And the moving image was me in a coonskin hat with the raccoon tail, sitting in a canoe with a little dog panting in the bow, and I'd be paddling along. So that was the dream. And when I've got this moving image in my head, often comes from watching telly programs in the 70s, then I get my alibi. Everyone needs an alibi. You can't just tell people you want to have fun. So the alibi was to follow Alexander Mackenzie in his amazing journey when he was the first person to cross North America, 1793, 12 years before Lewis and Clark. Though all Americans don't know this, he was a Scotsman, and he travelled with 9 people in a birch bark canoe. We had to make a birch bark canoe. I met a guy who knew how to make them. That was useful. Go into the forest, you take the bark off the tree, you bend it, invert it, sew it with roots that you find in a horrible swamp that you have to wander through in bare feet, and then you seal it with bitumen or pine resin. We then had to transport the canoe to the start of the journey in northern Canada, driving in a free van. Always get a free van that somebody wants you to deliver, and they even gave us the gas money too. And travelling with a canoe, you excite interest. A birch bark canoe excites extreme interest and love and veneration, so always have something like that when you're making a journey. Okay, the journey involved going across the Rocky Mountains. That meant going uphill. How do you go uphill in a canoe? It's difficult. You have to tow. Most of the time, towing, sailing, poling, and the dog kept jumping in the water. The dog jumped in the water. The dog jumped in the water, the current was strong, the current took the dog away. But because the dog had been getting back in the canoe and shaking his fur in my face for so long, I didn't really mind. But then, we lost the dog. It was a terrible story, but 4 days later, some Indians found the dog at a dog camp. They brought it in a jet boat all the way up the river, and the dog was back. Anyway, that was the end of the first year. The second year, we made some pathetic mileage. It freezes during the winter. You can only go in the summer. So we had a new team who were strong and liked smoking dope. Beggars can't be choosers. And so we set off on the rest of the journey, paddling, towing, and portaging. The portage is to cross any bit where there's land. But of course, if you have to do an 8-kilometre portage, as one of them was, you have to go there and back. And if you've got 3 loads, that's a 48-kilometre walk. Even 1 kilometre equals 3 kilometres. So portaging is something you definitely don't want to do a lot of. We went through Indian country. There's a lot of Cree-speaking communities up there. We were at a new chief's ceremony, one of the first ones for 20 years. We were allowed to film it. Unfortunately, the guy who was going to film it got stoned and didn't film it. So we didn't have any film. But you can hear those drums 5 miles away. Incredible. Another year. We didn't even finish. Mackenzie took 2 years. I was taking 3 years. A new team, calmer. Steve had been in the US Navy. Good. I then discovered he'd spent 5 years in the US Navy below decks on an aircraft carrier sniffing solvents. Joe, I'd fallen out with. He was still angry with me, but he was the photographer. He's still angry with me. That's why there are no photographs. Anyway, next bit of the journey, guns or bear spray. We saw bears every single day. We got given a gun. There's a lot of trust in the north of Canada. Guy gave us a gun, a .270, a lot of rounds. I didn't shoot any bears, and I didn't shoot anything apart from doing Saddam Hussein type stuff. Anyway, we got to the final rapids. Steve, being a real man, held onto the boat. It broached. The nylon rope cut his thumb off. We got him to a hospital, and he had no insurance, so he had to do it under a local anaesthetic. They cut more bone off, sewed it up. He said the vibrations were terrible. Okay. The river was dammed. It had to cross a massive, massive lake. The lake was flooded forest. The trees would rot and shoot up. They're called tree rockets, and you do not want a tree rocket up your ass. No way. Okay, we finally got to the Arctic Divide. There was 1 kilometre dividing the watershed from the Arctic to the Pacific. We had to walk across that 1 kilometre. And we had to break through 13 beaver dams to get there. And that sounds a bad thing to do, but there are a lot of beavers. And we had to break through those beaver dams, man. So we got there. Then we were going downhill all the way down this river called the Bad River. You couldn't cross it because there was logs and things. And Joe broke his ankle, fractured his ankle, so he had to make that last portage, crawling on his belly like Gollum through all this kind of leaf litter. So it was quite a dramatic exit from the Bad River. Now it was downhill all the way. The mighty Fraser River, 10 kilometres an hour, very fast. If you hit a rock in a birch bark canoe, it doesn't break. It just bends around the rock, and you can see the rock going down the body of the canoe, flexing it. It's a brilliant material, birch bark. Fantastic. Much better than plastic, much better than metal. It's a wonderful, wonderful material. And then we had to ditch the canoe because the last bit was following moccasin Indian trails across the inland plateau, following in the footsteps of Alexander Mackenzie. And on this route, this has been, a previous expedition had been banned by the Indian tribes because they were, colonialists are unpopular. But we were a low-key expedition. Unfortunately, sometimes we did attract the attention of Indian children, and being stoned a couple of times by Indian kids is not great fun, but there we are. Okay, and finally we went over the mountains, down to the Pacific Ocean. It's a whole temperate rainforest. We totally ran out of food, but it didn't matter. There were hummingbirds. It's amazing to go over sort of snowy peaks and come down and find hummingbirds buzzing around. And as we made our way down, you could see the Pacific Ocean, which was a wonderful sight after 3 long years. We got to the rock where Alexander Mackenzie had also written his name, Naturally Jubilant. But on this rock are rock carvings which Tor Heyerdahl ascertained were extremely similar to those he'd found in the Marquesa Islands, indicating probably a journey to the Marquesa Islands, which told me that journeys wrap the globe, dreams wrap the globe. Get out there and make a journey.